He has jumped from moving trains, driven cars off collapsing bridges, and thrown punches at some of the biggest names in Hollywood without ever flinching on camera. But ask Jason Statham about the one relationship that has quietly outlasted every rumor, every tabloid headline, and every prediction that it wouldn't survive, and the toughest man in action cinema goes almost completely silent. That silence, more than 15 years in the making, is exactly what makes this story worth telling. Because behind the explosions and stunt work, Jason Statham has spent over a decade protecting something far more fragile than any film franchise, a private life built around one woman who changed the entire direction of his personal story. Long before the fame, there was a boy from Shirebrook, Derbyshire, a former coal mining town where nobody could have predicted a future Hollywood leading man. Statham was born on July 26, 1967, to Eileen Yates, a dancer, and Barry Statham, a street market trader who also sang in working men's clubs. The family later moved to Great Yarmouth, where young Jason grew up around market stalls rather than movie sets, learning early how to talk fast, sell hard, and read a crowd. It was a childhood built on hustle, not privilege, and those years on the stalls would resurface decades later in ways nobody expected. Diving, not acting, was the first real obsession. Statham joined the British National Diving Squad and spent 12 years competing at an elite level, training for a shot at the Olympics in both 1988 and 1992. He never made the team, finishing 12th at the World Championships in 1992 and representing England instead at the 1990 Commonwealth Games in Auckland. He has spoken publicly, including in a widely cited profile with Great British Life, about starting diving too late to ever truly close the gap on competitors who had trained since early childhood. That disappointment didn't end his athletic career so much as redirect it. Modeling contracts with French Connection followed, a decision that would soon change everything. It was through French Connection that Statham crossed paths with a then-unknown filmmaker named Guy Ritchie, who was casting a low-budget crime film and needed someone who could believably play a market trader. According to accounts that have circulated for years, including in Statham's own interviews, Ritchie tested him by having him try to sell fake jewelry to a skeptical audience on the spot. Statham, drawing on years of real market experience, passed convincingly enough to land a roll of bacon in 1998's Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. The film became a cult sensation, and the partnership between Ritchie and Statham continued with Snatch in 2000, a movie that helped introduce Statham to American audiences and Hollywood studios almost overnight. What followed was one of the most consistent runs in modern action cinema. The Transporter franchise arrived in 2002 and ran for 3 films, built around Statham's precision driving and hand-to-hand combat style. The Italian Job brought mainstream box office success in 2003. Crank turned into a cult classic in 2006. War, The Bank Job, and Death Race followed across 2007 and 2008, and by the time The Expendables launched in 2010, Statham had firmly established himself as one of the most reliable leading men in the genre. The Fast and Furious franchise added Deckard Shaw to his resume starting in 2013, a role that carried him through multiple sequels over the following decade. Recent releases, including The Meg in 2018, Wrath of Man in 2021, Operation Fortune in 2023, and The Beekeeper in 2024 have kept him firmly in leading man territory well into his 50s, with his filmography now credited with grossing well over $1 billion worldwide. Critics took notice of the consistency behind that run. Several film writers over the years have pointed out that few action leads have managed to stay commercially relevant across 3 separate decades the way Statham has, moving from British crime capers to American blockbusters without ever losing the physical credibility that made him believable in the first place. Part of that credibility came from a stubborn insistence on doing much of his own stunt work, a choice that built enormous trust with directors and stunt coordinators, but occasionally came with real danger attached. During the filming of one project, Statham reportedly found himself trapped underwater in a dangerous accident on set, and it was his years of competitive diving training, not his acting experience, that allowed him to stay calm long enough to get to safety. It is a detail that captures something essential about him. The diving career that never reached the Olympics quietly kept saving him in other ways, long after he had moved on from the sport itself. His continued partnership with Guy Ritchie also deserves attention, since it represents one of the more unusual director-actor relationships in modern film. What began as a single audition on a market stall, testing whether an unknown model could believably sell fake jewelry, turned into a working relationship that spanned decades and multiple films, including Revolver in 2005 and later collaborations as both men's careers matured. Few actors can claim a professional bond that traces back to a single unscripted test like that one, and fewer still have managed to sustain across so many years in an industry known for short attention spans and shifting loyalties. But long before any of that commercial success, Statham's personal life had already begun taking shape in ways the public barely noticed. In the late 1990s, during his modeling years, he met an 18-year-old model named Kelly Brook. He was 30. The relationship grew serious quickly, eventually leading to an engagement and nearly 7 years together, including a home the couple shared in the English countryside. Brook made a significant sacrifice for that relationship, stepping away from a successful presenting career in Britain to relocate to America and support Statham as his acting career began to take off. Years later, speaking on Elizabeth Day's podcast How to Fail, Brook reflected candidly on that period, acknowledging that the dynamic between them had grown lopsided over time, with her own ambitions taking a backseat while his career accelerated. The relationship ended in 2004, and Brook has since spoken about it as a difficult but ultimately clarifying chapter of her life, one she does not look back on with resentment. No children came from those 7 years together, and both went on to build separate families of their own in the years that followed. Brook went on to become one of the most photographed models in Britain, and neither she nor Statham has spoken about the relationship with any real bitterness since, describing it instead as a formative chapter that simply reached its natural end under the strain of two competing careers pulling in different directions. After Brook, Statham's romantic life largely disappeared from public view, a pattern that would define every relationship he had going forward. A brief connection with Australian singer and actress Sophie Monk in 2005 came and went quietly. A more substantial relationship followed with Israeli actress Alex Zosman beginning in 2006, lasting roughly 4 years before ending quietly in early 2010 with almost no public explanation. By that point, a clear pattern had emerged. Statham simply did not discuss his relationships, did not confirm rumors, and gave the tabloids very little to work with. It was a defense mechanism built from watching how public scrutiny had worn down his relationship with Brook, and it would carry directly into the most important relationship of his life. That relationship began in 2009 at a party in London, when Statham met a young model named Rosie Huntington-Whiteley. Born in Plymouth, Devon, and raised on a family farm alongside two younger siblings, Huntington-Whiteley had already built a significant modeling career by the time they met, working with major fashion houses and becoming one of the faces of Victoria's Secret starting in 2006. The two did not rush to make the relationship public. Instead, their connection deepened gradually, helped along by overlapping film work when Huntington-Whiteley was cast in Transformers, Dark of the Moon in 2010, marking her feature film debut. Their first public red carpet appearance together came at the Vanity Fair Oscar party in February 2011, followed by an appearance at the Met Gala later that year. What set this relationship apart from the beginning was its pace. Unlike the whirlwind romances so common in Hollywood, Statham and Huntington-Whiteley built their partnership slowly, over years rather than months, largely away from cameras. Huntington-Whiteley has spoken in various interviews over the years about being struck by how grounded Statham was in private, a stark contrast to the tough, unshakable characters he plays on screen. That groundedness, she has suggested, traces directly back to his years working market stalls and diving boards long before fame ever entered the picture, an origin story that gave him a kind of humility not always found in men with his level of global recognition. After roughly 5 years together, the couple became engaged in January 2016, with the news confirmed publicly once Huntington-Whiteley was photographed wearing a ring at the Golden Globe Awards. The ring, created by celebrity jeweler Neil Lane, was widely reported at the time to be a rose gold design valued in the hundreds of thousands of dollars. Reports suggested the actual proposal had taken place privately during a holiday in Thailand just days before the public reveal, though neither Statham nor Huntington-Whiteley ever confirmed the precise details, staying true to their long pattern of guarding the private moments of their relationship even as the public milestones became impossible to hide. Parenthood soon followed. Huntington-Whiteley announced her pregnancy in early 2017, and the couple's son, Jack Oscar Statham, was born that June. Statham became a father for first time at 49, a milestone widely reported to have shifted his priorities considerably, even as he continued working at a demanding pace across multiple action franchises. A second child, daughter Isabella James Statham, arrived in February 2022. Around that time, the family relocated from Los Angeles back to London, a move reportedly driven by a shared desire to raise their children closer to extended family and within the British school system that had shaped both of their own upbringings. Despite their fame, the couple has kept their children almost entirely out of the public eye, rarely sharing photographs and avoiding detailed interviews about family life. That same instinct toward privacy that once protected their relationship in its earliest years now extends fully to their children, a deliberate choice in an industry where very little tends to stay private for long. Occasional glimpses slip through, usually brief and carefully curated. But the overwhelming pattern remains one of restraint. For years, rumors have swirled around the relationship, particularly persistent claims of a secret wedding, fueled in part by sightings of Statham wearing a ring in public well before any formal ceremony was ever confirmed. No representative for either Statham or Huntington-Whiteley has ever confirmed a wedding, and the couple continues to be described publicly as engaged rather than married. Huntington-Whiteley has addressed the topic directly in past interviews, explaining that work commitments and the demands of raising two young children push formal wedding planning down the list of priorities, while also pushing back on the idea that a couple needs a wedding date to validate a genuinely happy relationship. Other rumors have suggested that the 20-year age gap between them has created friction, though nothing in the public record over more than 15 years together supports that narrative. If anything, both partners have described the difference in life experience as something that strengthens rather than strains their relationship, with Huntington-Whiteley pointing repeatedly to grounded, unpretentious qualities Statham brings home from decades spent working long before fame ever entered the picture, and Statham, in his own limited comments, crediting her with a steadiness that has little to do with the glamour of modeling campaigns or red carpets. What is verifiable, beyond the speculation, is the simple arithmetic of time. More than 15 years have now passed since that first meeting in London, longer than Statham's relationship with Kelly Brook and his relationship with Alex Zosman combined. In an industry defined by short-lived romances and constant turnover, that longevity alone sets this relationship apart. Statham, true to form, rarely discusses it in detail during interviews, maintaining the same guarded instincts that have followed him since his earliest days of fame. Huntington-Whiteley has been somewhat more open over the years, occasionally offering glimpses into their life together during interviews and public appearances, though she too has largely kept the deepest details of their partnership private. Huntington-Whiteley's own career has continued to grow well beyond modeling during these years. She founded the beauty and skincare company Rose Incorporated, which expanded from a digital platform into a full retail presence, earning recognition in the beauty industry independent of her modeling background or her relationship with Statham. That professional evolution mirrors something notable about the relationship itself, rather than one partner's career eclipsing the other's, as it happened in Statham's earlier relationship with Kelly Brook. This partnership appears to have allowed both people room to build separate, successful identities while still maintaining a shared life together. Looking back across the full arc of Jason Statham's story, from a diving board in Norfolk to market stalls in Great Yarmouth, to some of the biggest action franchises in modern film history, there's a clear through line of discipline, reinvention, and quiet determination. But it is in his private life, not his filmography, where that same discipline seems to have paid off most meaningfully. A man known globally for playing characters who trust no one and need no one to spend more than a decade building a family life defined by trust, patience, and a level of privacy that fame usually makes impossible to maintain. At 58, with 2 children, a shared home back in London, and a relationship that has quietly outlasted nearly every prediction made about it, Jason Statham's toughest and most enduring role may not be the one audiences have paid to watch on screen. It may simply be the one he has spent 15 years protecting from the cameras altogether, choosing, again and again, to fight hardest of the parts of his life that the world was never meant to see.